Hey guys, do you have dreams but seem to be stuck in the stress bubble of life and unable to craft a plan to accomplish your goals in life? Join us today as we give you a simple 3-step plan to achieve your goals. Men in the Arena Army, we salute you. Hey guys, thanks for listening to this episode of the Men in the Arena podcast. I'm Jim Ramos, your guide and host of today's show, leading you out of the stress bubble of life and to your best version. Thank you for making the Men in the Arena podcast Spotify's #1 podcast for Christian men, where Romans 1:16 is our theme, that I am not ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ, for the power of God for the salvation for the Jews first and then the Gentiles. And God, he has taken care of us, guys. In the month of July, we've had the highest number of downloads of any month in our history. So guys, thank you for making that happen. And we are excited today to bring on our new guest, Jon Acuff. Jon Acuff is the New York Times best-selling author with 9 books to his credit, including Soundtracks, your new playlist, and the Wall Street Journal #1 bestseller, Finish. Give Yourself the Gift of Done, which I've got to go get that book. I love that title. That's all about me. So when he's not writing books or recording his All It Takes Is a Goal podcast, Jon can be found on stage as one of Inc.'s top 100 leadership speakers in the world. He's spoken to hundreds of thousands of people around the world, including FedEx, Range Rover, Microsoft, Nokia, and Comedy Central. He lives outside Nashville, Tennessee, with his beautiful wife of 22 years and their 2 daughters. His newest book, which will be released on September 12th, All It Takes Is a Goal, the 3-step plan to ditch regret and tap into your massive potential, will be released, and we are going to talk about that today. So, Jon, it's great to have you on the show, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, hey, before we jump into the book, tell us a little about your story, what got you to this point, what makes you tick?
Well, I grew up in the church. My dad's a pastor.
Oh.
So I pastor's kid out here changing the world. Go PKs. And spent about 15 years in corporate marketing. Always loved the written word. I started a blog in 2008 called Stuff Christians Like, where I wrote about the funny things we do in church. So silly
funny
things like wishing I had a shirt that said I direct deposit my tithe so that I wouldn't get judged on Sunday morning, because no one around me knows, like when I hot potato the offering basket, that I'm still down with the king. But if I had a shirt that said I direct deposit my tithe, I'd be fine.
I know. I want to get what says I bill pay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's just silly stuff like that. That kind of turned into a bigger blog than I anticipated. It turned into a book. I ended up starting to speak at churches and colleges and conferences, and about 10 years ago started my own company to do that full time. So in the last few years, I've written books mainly focused on life improvement, things like how do you start goals, how do you finish goals, how do you deal with your mindset, and how do you tap into your potential. And that's what the new one's about. And as you mentioned in the bio, I live in Nashville. We've been here about 13 years. And I've got an almost 20-year-old and a almost 18-year-old daughter, or 2 daughters, and we love it here. And that's the quick bio.
So you're on the back end of the stress bubble.
Yeah,
That's what we call the stress bubble.
We're 1 more year of high school. She's already senior in high school, and so I'll be 48. We'll be empty nesters, and we'll enter into a new season of looking at life and building and growing. And so I love talking to other guys about that, because I don't think we talk about that nearly enough. I think there's a lot of guys. Being a guy is pretty isolating. And so I love that I get to talk to other men about that.
Well, you have a great quote at the end of your book that I'm going to save till later, but it really deals with objects versus stories. And I think that's what you're talking about. And my middle son's coming up here tonight. We're going to go shoot our bows and go scouting for elk. And I'm marrying my oldest son in a week, and his bride who works for me. And it's wonderful. If you do it right in the bubble, you reap so much fruit outside of the bubble.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
You can't see the mistakes people are making in their 40s, but in their 50s and 60s, they show up neon.
Yeah.
So you can kind of go, in my 30s, in my 40s, in my 50s, what am I doing? What am I doing? Yeah, and then if you factor that with, like, we have a really good, generous God who's crazy about us. And I think that's part of it too, is going, wow, like, we have a father that says you wouldn't give your own kid a snake. Why would I like? And I'm way better than that.
Totally.
Like, I'm way better than that. And so like it's really fun. I like my 40s more than I liked my 30s. And I think I'm gonna like my 50s more than my 40s. And so I feel like it just keeps getting more fun.
Yeah, all I can tell you is when you're doing those overhead squats at CrossFit, be careful because that could hurt the shoulders in the 50s. But besides you're good.
Yeah.
And then
my knees. Yeah, I know I have knees. In my 30s, I didn't even know I owned a knee.
You're like,
and in my late 40s, I'm like, what's that? What's that creaking? Like,
you're like 24-inch box jumps. I'm up and down. Now in the 40s you step down. In the 50s you crawl down. In the 60s you modify.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's graduated.
Oh,
it's
you know it, man. Well, hey,
Yep.
so you're reading your book and reading about your CrossFit goals and your running goals and all the things you're doing. I mean, obviously you've been married 22 years. You got 2 kids. It sounds like they just adore you. So it sounds like you're really crushing it in the stress bubble. And so you wrote this book, All It Takes Is a Goal, the 3-step plan to ditch regret and tap into your massive potential. And you also have a podcast, All It Takes Is a Goal. So I don't know which came first, the chicken or the egg, but this is apparent, at least it's a now passion of yours. Can you walk us through this book and the podcast and why you went with those titles for these guys?
Yeah. So this book came out of my own personal need. I was at college showing my daughter the college I went to. We did a college tour, my oldest daughter. And I was standing there, my wife was standing there, and my wife said, wasn't college amazing? And I said, no, it's terrible. It's a train wreck.
Yeah.
Like, I did not make good use of my college. Like, got rejected from every fraternity because I was so insecure and it came off as arrogance and anger and sarcasm. And I didn't do well with my grades. They were up and down. And I drove away from that kind of moment with a lot of regret. But I had just written this book about mindset called Soundtracks. And so I have these 3 questions that I teach people to ask their broken soundtracks. Is it true? Is it helpful? Is it kind?
Oh.
And if you can't say yes to those 3 things, it's not something you're supposed to be listening to. And so I looked at that moment and said, okay, can I turn that regret into hope? What does that look like? And college was 4 years, but what about the next 40? Like, what about going forward? So I had this deep kind of desire to figure that out for my own life. And then before I write a book, I see if other people need it too. So there's a PhD named Mike Peasley who helps me do research. We surveyed 3,000 people and said, are you living up to your potential? And 96% of them said no.
Yep.
And 50% of them said 50% of themselves was untapped. And
wow.
So the metaphor I use is like, that would be like walking down Christmas morning and only opening half of your gifts. And I think there's a lot of men right now listening to this that are capable of a lot more than they think. And they've got so many more gifts to open up. So once I knew, okay, I want to work on it in my own life. There's a lot of other people that will work on it with me that I can help. Now it's worth spending a few years trying to figure out, how do you deal with potential? How do you make that actionable? The books I write, I'm always going, what do I do with this on a Tuesday? There's a million people giving a million men advice that you go, that's fuzzy, that's holistic. I don't even know what to do with that in my real stress bubble. Like, you can tell when another man gives you advice and they haven't lived in the trench.
Yep.
And they go, you just got to do this. And you go, okay, you must not have any kids. You must not have real world stuff. You gave me advice that isn't true. It's technically true. It's not practically true. And so I wanted to write a book about potential that was tactical and would give people real steps they could really use. That's why it was worth it to me to spend a few years working on this project.
Well, and that's the way you break it into your 3 steps, I thought was really cool because they're phrases I probably won't ever forget, like short-term goals, long-term goals, SMART goals, blah, blah, blah. I've heard it 1,000 times, but you broke it down to something different. On page 17, you said something I thought was cool. You kind of bring it down to earth here. You said, what if I could turn potential into a goal? Now, I thought that was interesting. Then you said that would otherwise simplify a confusing challenge. So we're talking about applying our potential and getting boots on the ground. So let's just dive into this thing, man. You start off early on. I kind of want to build a progression here, and you kind of start off with the guys and go, hey, listen, you're in the stress bubble. You're over on this side, and over here you see your dreams and your goals and your potential, but there's a wall. There's a wall. Can you talk us through this thing you call the vision wall?
Yeah, so a lot of men, when you sit down with them and they have that sense, they know they're created for something more. They have that, there's this discontent. And you go, a lot of times in that moment, people say, well, what do you want to do? What do you want to do with your life? What's your 10-year plan? What's your 20-year plan? What's your, what do you want to be when you grow up? And that paralyzes a lot of people, that blank piece of paper. And that's what I call the vision wall. There's men that think they have to know exactly where they're headed before they head the first step, or they have to know exactly where it's going to be in 15 years before they take the first step. And so what I like to do is go, no. What would it look like for us to climb a gold ladder together? And I'll tell you what I mean. So most people, when they have a big goal, say I want to have a really great family. I want to make $1 million in my business. I want to get in shape, CrossFit. I want to run a marathon, whatever. They have this 12-foot ladder, and there's only 2 rungs. There's the rung at the top that says write a book or start a business. And there's the rung at the bottom, which is the name of the goal. And then there's nothing in between. So they stand at the bottom and go, to do this, I have to jump 12 feet in the air, which is 2 feet higher than a basketball rim, grab it and pull myself up. And my version of that is, what if we put rungs every 6 inches on that ladder? Sure. What if there were 50 rungs? Do you think you could climb to the top? Like, you think you could get there? And they go, yeah, of course. And I say, okay, well, let's figure those out together. So an example of that would be, I realized I wanted stronger friendships. I wanted like that, but that's too fuzzy. I can't measure that. I can't make that a goal. So I figured out, how do I turn that into a goal? So I decided I'm going to encourage one other man I know every day for a month. I'm going to think of 30 people, and for a solid month, all I did was text. It wasn't like I wrote long letters. I didn't make it complicated. I would text another guy and go, hey, I was just thinking about somebody who's brave. And like, every time I think of bravery, you're the person that comes to mind. Like, it's so fun to get to see you do your life.
Wow.
And there wasn't a single man that said, I wish you hadn't told me that today. I wish you hadn't said that. 90% of them said, you don't know how much I needed that today. You don't know how much I needed that this week. And so now I took something fuzzy, be a better friend, and made it actionable and tactical. And then I could do it. And then like, once you get these little kind of steps, you want more of it. You want more momentum. And so you climb the ladder and you just keep doing it. That's how you get around the vision wall.
So is that what you meant? It's a wall, but in your book, you said the vision wall is a gateway. So it's a wall, but if you want to get to where you want to be, it's a gateway. Then you said this, it stands between you and your potential. It is only one rule to fulfill your potential. You must first create a detailed, compelling, long-reaching vision for your life. When I read that, Jon, I thought, oh, that's a book that's coming out in 2 years. That'd be a great book. The vision wall. And I'll write the foreword for you and get full credit for that idea. But I thought that's important, right? Because it's more than just, those little rungs on the ladder. Those really are detailed, compelling, long-reaching types of rungs to get you up and over, correct?
Exactly. And part of it is like, so I talk about the 3 different zones that people spend time in, because everyone listening to this podcast is a high performer. And I know that because low performers don't listen to the content like this. They don't even know the category exists on Spotify.
Exactly.
So congratulations. If you're listening to this, you're already a high performer. The challenge is being a high performer doesn't automatically make you a high achiever. We all know people who are capable of sporadic bursts of performance, but don't turn it into long-term sustainable achievement.
Oh, that's good.
And the reason why is that high performers bounce between 3 zones. The comfort zone, we all know that one. It's talked about a ton. The chaos zone, which is on the opposite end. And then the middle is the potential zone. So we over talk about the comfort zone, but as men, we especially don't talk enough about the chaos zone. The chaos zone is where you try to do everything all at once. So you ricochet. So you feel stuck. And maybe in December, you're like, I feel stuck. I'm going to do some New Year's resolutions. I'm going to get in shape. I'm going to pay off my debt. I'm going to date my wife. I'm going to be better than my kids. I'm going to do an Ironman. I'm doing it all this weekend.
Yeah.
And you ricochet into the chaos zone and you don't accomplish any of it because it's chaotic and it's unreasonable. And that's why we have the phrase yo-yo diet in our country.
Totally.
Because people yo-yo back and forth. And in the middle is the potential zone, the Goldilocks zone, not too hot, not too cold, not too much, not too little. It's this perfect spot for you to say, okay, I'm doing sustainable action over time and building the life I want. Now, when it comes to having that vision, nobody leaves their comfort zone just because. There's not a single man that's ever woken up and said, today I'm just going to have discipline. Today I'll have grit today for no reason. It's time to have grit. No, what happens is you get a desire that's better than your comfort zone. you see a little glimpse of something that makes you leave you shouldn't want to leave your comfort zone. It's comfortable.
Yep.
Like, you know the rules, it's easy. But what happens is you get this glimpse of something outside the comfort zone that's worth leaving it for, worth being brave for, worth turning the television off for, worth sacrificing for. That's how you get out of the comfort zone. When you've got that little bit of glimpse of, oh wait, I think I could do something different. I think I could be something different. I'm going to try.
Okay. I like how you clarified that high performers bounce between 3 zones, because when I was reading this, I thought there's also a 4th zone I want to add, and it would be the Christ zone. It's this zone that goes above and beyond. It looks into eternity, but that wouldn't fit in the context of high performers bounce between these zones. So I do appreciate that.
No, but for me, like, for me, the potential zone, is Christ. Like, you talked about Romans was a verse that guides you for this. Like, I love where the rich landowner gives the talents out. And there's 5 and there's 2 and there's 1.
Just read it this morning.
I'm a double the talents guy. Like, that's whether it's 5 or 2, that's what I want to do. And when you read that passage, there's a party after, there's a celebration. So a lot of my message to men is, let's get a shovel. Like, you buried some of your talents. Let's get a shovel. Let's dig those up. What would that look like? How do we lean into that? So to me, that's how I think about potential in regards to the gifts God's given you. It's like, hey, and you'll never see in the Bible where God says, play it safe. I don't think I can do that. Like, play it safer. I don't think I can do that. And so that's where I go, like, oh yeah, like, when you tap into that, there's no end to what you can accomplish.
Totally. Yeah. 2 Corinthians 4:16-18 comes to mind, that which is seen is temporary, that which is unseen is eternal. And it's funny, just going off of that, when people ask me, how do I know God's will? I tell them it's usually the hard thing that you don't want to do. I mean, it's usually with the great rewards, it's usually that 12th rung way up there. And God calls you to it, but says, but all you have to do is take the 6-inch step to this next one. And just, like, we started this ministry with 15 guys in a coffee shop. We reached 8 million people last year. Well, my digital marketing gal thinks it's 18 million, but I don't think that's true. You can't double count, right? That's pastoral. Yeah. You're a PK, we're going to double count,
Easter.
Baby.
How many people are at Easter? 10,000.
That's we have 10,000 every Sunday. Yeah, totally. So,
exactly.
But I mean, this is good stuff. You just to take that next step. And so I was really encouraged in your book. I resonated once we get past this vision wall. I resonated with your paradigm. For many, it's a new paradigm. For me, I've been saying it all my life. You talk about this best moments list. Can you unpack the value of this and what you learned from this that was so significant? We're talking page 35 in your book, I think. You start a 7 fill-in-the-blank questions. It was really, really good.
Yeah, so when I wanted to live into my potential, I couldn't figure out what the next 20 years would look like. I just didn't, that was impossible. I was in the moment, I felt a little stuck. So that left me the past. And so I said, you know what? I'm in an Augusta airport, Augusta, Georgia. I wrote best moments on the top of a piece of paper. And then I started to list out the moments in the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years where I felt most alive, where I felt the greatest joy, where I felt like I was using my gift, where I felt exhausted but elated. That's, that doing the difficult thing, but it fills you up. And so I thought I'd write 10 down, 20 down. I ended up writing down more than 170. And a couple things happened from that exercise. One, it taught me gratitude. Like, we always tell people, like, you should be more grateful, but what's the action? The action for me was when you tell your head and your heart to remember great moments, you get naturally more grateful. The second thing it taught me was self-awareness, because if you tell your head and your heart to look for those moments in the past, they automatically look for them in the present. Suddenly you'll be with your kids, your wife, you'll be doing something. You'll go, oh, this is the best moment. This is one, like, while I'm in it. Like, I describe being present as being nostalgic about the moment you're still in. Like, imagine as a man, if you didn't have to wait for a month to look back on something and enjoy it, you got to enjoy it in the moment and go, oh man, God, like, you give the best stuff. And then the third thing that happens is that you automatically want more of that. Like, you want more of that. And I heard somebody say the other day, like, God will provide enough for me. And I thought, he's not an enough God. He's a cup runneth over.
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
We don't give him nearly enough credit for how beautiful and gracious and gigantic he is. And so I started to teach the best moments list to other people. And there would be guys, and I'd say, hey, do 30, write down 30. And they would write 300. And they couldn't stop. And so it ends up being this life plan for your future, because you come up with all these moments and you go, this is who I was built to be. I want more of that tomorrow. Like, I want more of that next year. Some of this happened accidentally. How do I be deliberate about it? And that's where you'll go as a man. You'll go, man, I wrote down 3 community moments with other dudes. I didn't know that before I started the list. I want 9 next year. I don't want 3 that happened accidentally. I want 9 next year. And then all of a sudden you go, all right, cool. I'm signing up for that thing. I'm going to volunteer. Like, I'm going to do that. Like, wow, here's these things that are true about me. How do I put them in the future? And where it ended up being counterintuitive, which I wasn't expecting, was that we as a culture are addicted to sadness and trauma and depression. And so, for instance, for every 100 scientific papers written about sadness, there's only 1 written about joy.
What?
We over-focus. Yeah, we over-focused on negativity. And so this was the opposite of that. This said, whoa. What if there was lessons in joy? What if there was lessons for us about who we are and who we could be? And so that's where the list got really fun for me, is that it was so counterintuitive to so many things that we talk about.
Well, and you know, it's interesting, Jon, I really resonate with this because I'm 57 and I've noticed my kids are out of the house. So what we're doing is we're starting to manage our home. We're not upsizing. We're kind of buying other homes, but I mean, we're not going to be in a bigger place. And my parents are giving all their stuff away. And so we get to a point where we accumulate and we start offloading. Yeah. And we get to a point that all that matters is memories. And you're a PK. I'm a pastor who raised 3 sons, and my kids all said, well, Dad, you know, we never had a lot of stuff, but we've got great memories. And I said, well, that's because we've invested in the power of story. And I'm going to jump down to page 180 really quick, because you said something that really resonated. You told your readers, own more stories, less objects. What do you want to say about that?
Well, yeah. So what happened was I asked people to write down their best moments, and every single person that did it, we probably had 300 or 400 people do it. What happens is you start to categorize the list. There's 4. Every one of those moments will fit in one of 4 categories. Yep. It'll be an experience moment, a relationship moment,
accomplishment,
an object, or an accomplishment.
Yeah.
And so I'll give you the breakdown. You live in Oregon. There's tons of hiking there. Let's just use that.
Yep.
If you hike by yourself and it's beautiful, that's an experience moment. If you hike with another guy and he's going through a divorce and you're able to pour into him, that's a relationship moment. If you hike it faster than you've ever hiked and you wore a weighted vest, like, that's an accomplishment. If you grabbed a rock from the top because it reminded you can do hard things, that's an object. So we had people categorize them and then count them up. And everyone's object list was the absolute smallest thing they had.
For sure.
Now, where that's crazy is we're taught you should want more stuff. Every form of marketing is you should want more stuff. But then when you really plumb your heart, you realize, but that's not the stuff that fills me up.
True.
So I said, what was interesting was the things that were on people's list that were objects, none of them were there just because. They were there because they told a story that mattered to them. So it would be stuff like a bow. Like, if you gave your sons a bow and that was their first bow and that was what they got their first elk with, like, they wouldn't keep the bow because of how the bow was made. They would keep the bow because how the moment was made. And so I started to say, okay, how do you invest in more of those situations where there's a moment attached to it, there's a person attached to it, there's a story attached to it? That's where you really start to see the small degree of stuff that's really, really fun, is when it's a story.
You know, it's so funny. I just got back from our national leaders retreat in Red River, New Mexico. And while I was fly fishing, I was annoyed by this single mom with her 2 little kids who was getting tangled and ruining all the fishing. And God spoke to me, help her with those kids. So I got this strange, big, ugly looking dude, got to help her 2 sons, single mom, catch their first trout. So forever, there will be this picture of this big, ugly guy. They don't know who his name is, holding this fish with their kid. Their first fish will be with this strange guy. So to me, I was like, forget all the fish I caught. What mattered was be that experience. And that's what I loved about, unpacking into these 4 categories. Again, their experience, accomplishment, relationship, and object. And so that is so, and you said in your book, when these best moments are when your vision and your reality overlap. I thought that was really powerful. So your vision
of how life could be. So every man listening to this has a vision of, here's the type of husband I am, here's the type of leader I am, or the CEO or whatever. And then you look at your reality, and if there's a gap, you shouldn't feel shame about that. You should say, look at all this I get to close with God. Like, look at all this room for growth. Like, the gap is pretty far and I get to close that. And that's what's fun about doing your podcast for so long, is that you get those emails. You get the emails from the guys that say, hey, you don't know me, you never met me, but you helped me close my gap. Like, you did an episode on, being truthful, and I was truthful about something and it really changed my relationship. So you get to see guys that are closing those gaps. And that's where it's really fun, is when you do have this vision of who you are and it matches the reality.
That's so true.
And you go, like when you're marrying your son soon, like that's going to be one of those moments where like the boy I prayed over and dreamt about him being someday is the man standing at this altar. Like, you talk about a vision and a reality overlapping, like that's going to be an amazing moment.
Yeah. And he's got my name. He's my firstborn with my name. So the power of story is so compelling to climbing the vision wall, to maximizing our full potential. I want to jump into these 3 steps in your subtitle. I love the way you phrased them. And so I'm just going to do a little 30,000 foot deal, and I'm going to let you jump into it. So you talk about breaking our dreams or our potential into 3 goals. Easy goals. Easy goals are a 2-hour-a-week goal. These are what help us escape what you say is the comfort zone. Middle goals help us avoid the chaos zone, which is about a 5-hour-a-week investment. And then I this is a bold move, buddy. I love this. You call them guaranteed goals. We're going to talk about this. They help you live in this potential zone, and this is about an 8-hour-a-week investment. So this is page 209 of your book. So walk us through these. Again, I think if we look at this ladder rung illustration, I think this kind of helps us. So I love how you phrased these 3 steps. Let's walk through them.
Yeah. So an easy goal is when you start, when you kind of on-ramp this idea. So if somebody said, if somebody's listening to this, 83% of Americans want to write a book. That's one of the most popular goals, according to the New York Times.
Really?
So, So if there's a man on this podcast, listen to this podcast, that wants to write a book, I wouldn't say write a book. I'd say write a chapter, write a page. Like, what are some easy ways to engage with that as you climb this ladder?
Yep.
Like, versus going, I got to write a whole book. Like, you shouldn't, because I'll talk to men that'll say, I got to write a book and I'm going to do it so my dad knows my career choices were good. I'm like, you're adding more pressure to something that already has pressure. Like, don't add more to that. So what's an easy entry into that? So then once you do a couple easy goals, you start to get momentum. You start to enjoy the feeling of it. You'll start to sacrifice other things to do it. So I didn't stop watching TV when I started my blog because I wanted to be disciplined. When I found something I felt called to do, I couldn't throw enough time at it.
Exactly.
Like, I couldn't wait to, I tell men, I want you to have a passion that lights you up so much that Netflix is boring. Yep. I want Netflix to be boring. You have to know you're up against 50,000 of the smartest developers and programmers that have ever lived. Like, reason you're distracted is not surprising. There's 50,000 people and their job description says, get more of your time. And they're amazing at it. And then you pick up a phone and go, oh, it's weird that I wasted all this time. It's not weird. They have PhDs on staff, psychiatrists on staff going, how do we give this thing in the right way that makes them do this thing? And so an easy goal gets you started, and it gets you moving in the right direction, and it gets you going. Like, it's like debt. Like, no one would ever say, hey, you've got 4 credit cards and you've got that, pay them all off at once. Like, what does Dave Ramsey teach? Debt snowball. Like, do the debt snowball. So you build up and you kind of work into these middle goals. And then the guarantee, you're right. The guarantee is bold, but let me just give you an example of that. If you do CrossFit 50 times this year and you didn't do it at all last year, you are guaranteed to be in better shape.
Yes.
You just thought it's impossible for you not to be. If you take your wife on 20 dates this year and you took her on 0 last year, it is guaranteed you will have a stronger relationship this year.
Absolutely.
So we like to put magic and mystery about our goals, but so many of them are just math. Yep. If I write 300 words a day, I have a book at the end of that year. It's almost impossible for me to not. That's a guarantee. And so that's what I mean by guaranteed goals, is that if we'll take the responsibility, if we'll own the action, if we'll lean into it, we do get guaranteed goals in our life. And it's the opposite of what we're taught, but it's 100% available.
Yeah, I've got a book behind me called Our Field Guide, the Bathroom Book for Men. And that was a daily journal I wrote for our children at the breakfast table out of my devotional life. And God, if you want to write a book, just get a journal and write in it every day.
Here's why people don't do it, though. The problem is excellence is boring.
Yes.
The excellence is boring. So like, you don't see it. You don't see all the little things. Like, think about it this way. I asked an NBA trainer the other day. He's trained 1 million people. I said, how many hours has Steph Curry practiced? I said, what's your estimate?
Oh.
Would you run those numbers for me? And he said, well, I think he started at 6 because his dad was Del Curry, NBA player.
Yeah.
He said from 6 to 35, I estimate 29,425 hours. A game, he'll play like 38 minutes. That's very small compared to 29,000 hours. So he's doing stuff all week, all year that you don't even see.
Yep.
Often alone, that's boring. And so as men, we have to be brave enough to go, I'm going to sit my butt down in the seat. I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to take running, for instance. The joke I sometimes do is that in Nashville, the spring is too rainy to run. The summer's too hot to run. The fall is too dark to run, and the winter is too cold to run.
Yep.
There's never going to be a good day to run.
Nope.
So, but that doesn't matter. Like, if I've made the commitment to run, I got to go do the miles. Like, no one will write your pages. No one will run your miles. No one will parent your kids. No one will love your wife. Like, that's on you. So how do we engage in that? Easy goals that turn into middle goals that turn into guaranteed goals. And by the time you've done that, you have proof that it's a guarantee.
Yeah.
By the time I'm on the middle of the ladder, I can see the top of the ladder, dude. I'm not guessing. Like, this is happening. Like, there's, if I had written one book, I probably couldn't have written about guaranteed goals because I hadn't climbed the ladder. Now that I'll turn in my 10th book the week that this 9th book comes out, and people go, oh, wow, you write a lot of books. No, I just sit in this chair a lot.
Yep.
Like, that's it's guaranteed. The 10th book is happening because I'm guaranteeing it to happen. The 11th book's going to happen. There's so many things you don't control. There's some things in life you do control, and your actions you do control.
Yeah, that's really good. Well, I'm at a point where I feel like writing a book's easy, but it was a nightmare the first couple, but it gets easier and easier. I love a phrase in your book, and I want to go back, and I think you made this phrase up. you giving you credit. So if you want it, and I think this is a massive problem. You talked about Netflix, you talked about social media, but you called it quote, distraction technology.
Yeah.
And I think it's worth me bringing up again because we've got to get, especially with us as dads, we've got to get out of the phone and love our children, love our wives, get off the couch and engage. We need to engage. And that's that comfort
what I said
zone.
there is it's scaled faster than our ability to focus.
Yeah.
So think about the leaps it's made in the last 20 years. My first phone had one game on it called Snake. And this little line went tick, 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 tick. Like, now you have every movie made in the history of movies on your phone. You have every video game. You have everybody you went to high school. You have 10 trillion distractions on your phone. It's only gotten harder. And the problem is our practice of focus hasn't scaled it the same way.
You're absolutely right.
Most men right now wouldn't go, yeah, here's how I work on focus. So let me give you a few, let's just go practical. Like, for instance, I don't bring my phone into my bedroom at night. It charges in my office.
Me either.
If it's in the bedroom with me, it's game over. I'm going to look at it.
Absolutely.
I'm going to watch one video that turns into 2 videos. And then, I'm going to stay up till 1 a.m. watching, some stupid sport I didn't know existed on YouTube. And so I charge it in another room. I read a lot on paper. I still read a lot on paper because paper doesn't have Instagram. Like, if I try to read on a device, especially like a Kindle Fire is hard for me because it's got the internet. A Kindle Paperwhite is just black and white. I can kind of focus on that, but I'm always going, I can focus here, I can focus there. The other thing is, when I'm working out, say I'm on a run, I'm listening to 15 minutes of a sermon and then 30 minutes of a positive book. It's kind of like this. I'm a negative person by nature, but I've tested negativity, I've tested positivity, and the ROI of positivity is so much better.
Yeah, for sure.
And I have to work really hard on it. So I don't starve my doubts, I drown them. So I'm
good.
in the Word of God and I'm going, hey, I need Psalm 23. I need that thing on a loop. Okay.
Yeah.
I need that. I can't trust myself to remember it. I got to memorize it. I'm listening to, audiobooks that are helpful. When I'm driving somewhere, I'm listening to audiobooks. So I'm deliberately, my big thing right now is wisdom. I'm living in Proverbs and Matthew right now. And we're told again and again and again and again, although it costs you everything, get it. Although it costs you everything. So then I said, okay, well, let me make a list of what it costs. I've never done that. So what does it cost? Let's get tactical, dude.
Yeah,
what
let's
does
get
it
down
cost
to it.
for me to get wisdom? It costs me time. It costs me money sometimes. It costs me humility. It costs me ego because I got to admit I don't know. It costs me patience because it comes at its own speed. So I made this list, and then you can go to your calendar and go, okay, where in my week am I going after wisdom?
Yeah.
Like the calendar is like time is the only honest metric. I meet a ton of dudes that go, care about my family, care about my health, care about blah, 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 blah. I go, cool, show me the hours.
Pie in the sky.
If you can't show me the hours, it's just the desire. It's not a reality. And so I realized I could not easily point where I was chasing wisdom and investing in wisdom and going after wisdom. So now, like, one of my goals this month is 50 wisdom hours. And that can be getting wise counsel from people I respect. That can be reading, Proverbs of Matthew and Psalm. That can be listening to audiobooks. There's a number of ways I can do that, but I'm tracking it. I'm tracking it in my notebook. Like, I know right now, like, if you look, if you're watching this on YouTube, like, those are my wisdom hours. And so I know I'm already we're recording this in the middle of the month. I'm at 34 for the month. Like, I'm going to kill the wisdom hours. Like, let's go. And so for me, that's what I mean by all it takes is a goal. When I find a desire in my life, I then goalify it. I go, how do I actually make this a goal so that I actually do it? Yeah.
And that's in your book. So you get,
exactly.
It's free.
Yeah.
It's free with the book.
Yep. Yeah, there's an action tracker in there, and I make my own all the time. So that's what I mean by all it takes is a goal. You find a desire, and then you go, if I make it a goal, I'll actually do it. It'll actually happen. It'll actually, come to be. So how do I do that?
So would that be the same as saying I have a gap in who I want to be versus who I am, or I have a few missing rungs in who I want to be versus who I am, and you're just kind of putting it
100%.
Okay.
Or here's two other ways. You see somebody in your circle and you go, I want a life like that. Like that man, the way they love their family, the way they lead. Like, we've all had that experience. Yeah. We've all been around people that just their presence makes us want to level up. We go, now the flip side of that is we've all had what I'd call reverse mentors where we go, I don't want to end up there. Like, I see that person and that's like, I see how they made those decisions. I see what happened there. I'm going to make different decisions in my life. So the gap, you can find the gap in them. And you might be on that path and you go, whoa, no. If that's where this leads, like, it's the ghost of Christmas future. Yep, I'm not going to end up there. What does that look like? You find this gap. And again, instead of getting stuck there, instead of going, I don't know what to do, it feels overwhelming, it's so complicated, you go, can I make it an easy goal? What would the first, like, again, okay, let's just do this. So maybe your gap is you're like, man, I don't feel like my wife thinks I appreciate her. Like, I've noticed that. And I want to change that. Like, an easy goal would be every time she mentions something that matters to her, like an object, you put it in a file in your phone and you just write it down. And she says, oh, I wish I had a new this. I wish, this one ran out, whatever. In November, you open up that file and you have 20 things she's said over the last 3 months, and you buy her the gifts that she's going to forget that you even took the time to write down and be blown away.
There's a pro tip right there. Pro tip.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, you can make, so for me, that's what I do, so that, like, I know if we're on vacation somewhere and Jenny sees something at a store and mentions it and I write it down in November, I've just hooked up November me. Because now, instead of trying to guess what, I've listened for 6 months, and it wasn't complicated. It wasn't painful. Like, it wasn't, but it says to her, hey, you matter to me. And here's so instead of saying, okay, you see this gap with your marriage, let's change your entire marriage this weekend, which overwhelming. You go, let's find a way to buy really good birthday presents. Like, what if we can figure that out? I bet we can figure that out.
Oh, yeah.
Like, my friend Tom makes it even better. He goes, dude, I go to Amazon and I add it to a list in Amazon. So now I know not only what it is, but I can probably find it on Amazon. I can buy it there. So he said, I have a private list, and like, that's even better. So I'm saying find small things that you can do. And then once you start to see the reaction to those, the progress, you're going to want to get them bigger. And it just becomes this fun game.
That is great advice. I appreciate that. Well, I'll tell you what, man, I want to honor your time commitment here. And I think we've hammered through this thing. Guys, it's easy goals, it's middle goals, It's guaranteed goals. The object lesson today, which was not in the book, is this climbing the ladder with rungs. I think that's a great picture for us today. I want to end with a quote, and I'm going to ask you a question. Page 249, you said this. I'm going to let you respond to your own quote. The funny thing about potential is that it's never gone. It's always awaiting. It's always available. It's willing to be redeemed at a moment's notice.
Yeah, so what I wrote about in that was that you're not an acorn. Like, it's such an old man thing that I do. I love picking up acorns, and I love them because of the potential they represent. Like, a single acorn, inside there is a 10,000 pound tree.
Yep.
It's such a beautiful picture of potential. But the problem with an acorn is that it can die. There can be 6 months, a year, like some acorns last even a couple years, but eventually it can get to a place where it can't be reanimated. It can't be used. It can't be grown. And people aren't like that. You're never beyond the reach, especially of a God who makes streams in the wasteland. Like like his favorite hobby is redemption.
Yep.
Like God's favorite hobby is redemption. And so you go, oh man, it's always there. Like, and there's so many men I know that would say, I've messed up my life. God can't use me, or I don't have potential. And then what happens is they end up using their story to help other men who have a similar story, and God redeems it that way. And like, so this is something I sometimes say to people, is that sometimes God uses your scars as lighthouses for other people who are headed toward the same rocks. And if you'll be brave enough to share them, they become lighthouses that help other people not hit those same rocks. And so there's so many ways that, especially in the context of faith, you see potential redeemed. And it's really, really fun when it happens.
I love what you said. God's favorite hobby is redemption. I like to say God loves to turn our mess into his message. So It's so good, man. So let's talk about the book. This is coming out September 12th. It takes a goal, the 3-step plan, which you guys heard today, to ditch regret and tap into your massive potential. How do these guys get a hold of your book on September 12th?
Yeah, so it'll be available anywhere books are sold. If you're an audio person, I'm an audio guy myself. I read the audiobook. There's 10 bonus stories in the audiobook that are only in the audiobook. My website's jonacuff.com, JONACUFF.com. And then my podcast is called All It Takes Is a Goal. And if you're going to listen to one episode, listen to the one with Greg Sankey. He's the SEC commissioner of the football league, crazy about Jesus, loves God, and it's a really powerful, fun interview to learn from somebody who's done some amazing things and is at the head of an amazing organization, and that his faith is every bit a part of his everyday.
That's awesome. Well, hey, Jon, thanks so much for taking the time to come on and share your expertise and wisdom. Hopefully we'll get you back on when the next book comes around, or we'll get you on with one of the books you've already written.
Let's go. Thanks for having me.
All right, brother. Have a great day. Hey guys, make sure if you haven't done so already that you subscribe to this podcast. If you are a subscriber, thank you. Go and write a 5-star review on behalf of our show. This helps us climb in the ranks and impact more people for Jesus. Until next time, feel the wet sand on the arena floor. Hear the deafening roar of the crowd. Taste the sweetness of victory. Smell the stench of battle. Get in the game. Get dirty. Grind it out. And be a man.